She had them in her house already.
Okay.
Another way of me making money.
All right. Well, first of all, I want to tell y'all thank you for coming. There's a lot of you. Huh? I know. No boys allowed, Brother Jason.
Nice try. Not high school where you go to the economics class.
I'm going to tell y'all what. I told Pastor, I guess we started talking about this a couple of months ago. What is it? I am. I started this study on my own, and it's called Control Girl, and I was just sharing with my husband, as you do, what you're experiencing, and he was like, okay, I want you to teach that, and I was like, uh-oh. So here we are, and I'm thankful to do it. And when I started seeing all of y'all sign up, I was like, oh my goodness, like this is a real deal. Like this is not just me that struggles with this. So I'm thankful that maybe we can come in here and get help. And y'all just pray for me while I'm going through this over the next 6 weeks. But I found a good verse. It was at camp, and the message was something in 2 Corinthians. And I just looked down and I saw this verse, and I was like, Lord said that's the verse for your class, and it was 2 Corinthians 13:9. It says, "For we are glad when we are weak, and ye are strong, and this also we wish, even your perfection." And I thought, that this is wanting to control everything in your life. It is a weakness, and it is something that we have to seek the Lord in. But the good news about that is every time I understand how very weak I am, it helps me to see how very strong he is. So I thought that would be a really good kind of theme verse for us to read and reread and meditate on and just pray over it for our life. How many of y'all have said to yourself, well, I'm actually just trying to make everything turn out right? I only control because I care so much. The things that we're trying to control in the moment are almost always linked to some kind of happy ending that we've got all worked up in our head, and it might not necessarily be what the Lord wants for us. Even though you try to control every circumstance, you cannot safeguard your life from heartache. And by taking control, oftentimes you create anguish for the people that you love instead of protecting them from it. So the happy ending in our head is often just an illusion, and it's because Jesus is in control. And if we could really truly get a hold of that and understand to just completely trust him, I think it'd be life-changing. Tonight in the class, we're going to kind of go over an overview of why we need this. We'll touch a little on Eve, but I'm not going to get into all of Eve tonight. But in this class, there's a lot of information. So I really hope to cover Eve, Sarah and Hagar, Rebecca and Leah, Rachel and Miriam, because we find that they all struggle with wanting to control things, just like we do today. They wanted to take things into their own hands and make everything turn out right, and in doing so, they made themselves and everybody around them miserable. And those women were making it all about them, and we do the same thing. We just do. We try to hijack the story that God's trying to write and take it in our own hands and ignore his greater purpose, and we make the story all about our happy ending and not his. So those precious ladies in our Bible we need to learn from so that we don't recreate their history. So there is a story about a little 6-year-old little girl, and she was moving into her home, a new home with her family. And her mother, she had her and a little boy, and she thought, well, I'll give my daughter the room in the back of the house. It looks over the backyard, and it's beautiful, and it's got the bigger closet. It's a bigger room. She grows up, she'll want that. And she tried to give her that. Well, the little 6-year-old girl said, no, Mama, I don't want that room. I want the room in the front. And the mom was like, well, why do you want that? That's overlooking the driveway. It's not that great of a view. And she said, well, because I want to be able to see the garbage trucks when they come and pick up our trash every week. And the mom was like, well, are you sure? Okay. So she gives the little girl her wishes. She gives her the room that she wants. And a couple years later, she's getting older and she's wanting those things that her mother knew would come. And she goes to her mom and she said, Mom, I don't understand. Why does my brother have this beautiful room in the back? He gets this gorgeous view. He's got the bigger closet, the bigger, I don't understand. Why didn't you give me that room? I was 6 years old when we moved in here. And she said, oh, darling, don't you remember? You wanted this room up here with the view of the garbage trucks. And in life, we do a lot of that ourselves, but we try to take a lot of the decisions based on what we're hoping for just right at the moment. And we take one path rather than the other based on a goal that we have. But the problem is, in our little 6-year-old mind, in that story, our perspective is skewed and our goals are underdeveloped. And we're just not where we need to be yet. And we want something just so. And God, because he loves us, says, well, okay, but this is not the best that I had for you. Have y'all ever seen that little thing going around on Facebook where, God's got that big teddy bear and the little boy's like, but I want it, the little tiny thing. And he's like, okay, but this is what I had for you. And that's sometimes where we run into problems with wanting to control our own circumstance. And I'm thankful that there is someone who can set up ahead and knows beforehand what will make us happy in the long run. But if we ignore God and take our own path, we'll end up at a trash pile that has lost its appeal that we thought that we once wanted. If we follow God and trust his eternal perspective, he'll lead us to an even more fabulous room than our little 6-year-old mind could fathom. So who knows what this is?
Nintendo
A Nintendo old school controller. By show of hands, who has ever given their toddler that has older siblings one of these that is not connected to think that they are playing the game that their siblings are? You really play. Yeah, not you, Christy. I have done this to my own children before. My older boys will be playing a game, and when Josh was little, here you go, buddy. You're playing the game too, and he's looking and he's thinking he's doing everything, and it solves a whole lot of problems. My older boys don't have to deal with the little one taking a turn when he doesn't really know how to play, and the little one thinks that he's just as much a part of it as the big ones. In life, we make a lot of decisions based on, no. That's not right. Ignore that. We're like the little boy holding our controller, the little toddler. We're locked in on those scenes in our life, thinking that we're completely in control, pushing all the buttons. And we feel responsible for making everything turn out right, as long as we're holding this controller, right? Let's see. Are we really in control? I would always tell you, I'm not in control. I know the Lord's in control. I would always tell you that. And I would believe that. Truly, in my head, I would believe God is in control. But my actions don't always reflect that. I know stories about the flood, how Lot's wife turned to salt. I know about the parting of the Red Sea. I know all those. And if you pointed at any of the stories in the Bible and say, see, God was in control the whole time, I would say, yep, I agree with you. But then, and I'm not hearing all of these situations yet, but some of you may be able to identify, then your teen starts dating someone that you disapprove of. I have been the teen in that situation, but, or your coworker is withholding information and making decisions without you, and you want to be included. Or your husband just shrugs off your concern about that musty smell in the basement, and nobody will do exactly what you want them to do. And you suddenly feel like you're losing control. And when that happens, I don't know if y'all are like that, but you bear down, your voice gets louder, your eyes squint a little bit, you get your point across, how you need to get it across to get that control back. You're determined, you're convinced that it's all up to you to set things straight. But your demeanor is the whole time raising the question, do I truly believe in my heart that God is in control? It's no longer a head thing. Do I believe it in my heart? So, do you ever wonder what God's reaction to your behavior is? That's a tough thing to think about. I don't like to really think about that much because more times than not, he probably wouldn't be thrilled with me. And that's painful because you want him to be exactly happy with every single thing that you do. And your goal is to make him happy with, with every movement, but it just doesn't turn out that way. Do you think that maybe he looks at you and just shrugs it off, just thinks, It's fine. She's trying to do it all on her own. It's one thing for a little toddler to be holding this and carry on that facade that everything is in his little clutching hands are fine. But what if I'm the one clutching that illusion with my sweaty, frantic hands trying to do everything? I don't think he shakes his head with just disappointment and belief and just lets me continue in that frustration. I don't think he does. With kindness, I think he leans down and he says, "Oh, sweet girl, you're not plugged in. You're not plugged into me." That hits home for me. God does not want you to have the burden of control. He doesn't. I think it was not meant for us to carry. It wasn't. Those cord dangling moments that he shows you, those opportunities, are invitations. They're invitations for you to recenter and trust him. Those moments are sometimes large. And I was really thinking about what I could share with y'all about some large things where God's proved to be in control in my life to share with y'all. And the number one that I can think of is when Josh, at 4 years old, most of y'all know in here, he had his first seizure that we saw at 4 years old. And it was devastating. I mean, absolutely devastating. And I mean, my first thought as I was sitting there holding him, just shaking, and it just was terrible. My thought was, why is he doing this? Does he have a brain tumor? Does he have cancer? Like, what am I going to find out when I take him to the doctor? What are they going to tell me? What does the rest? It was 5 o'clock in the morning, and I was so scared of that day. Like, what is going to be revealed to me in this day that could possibly change my life forever? And it was a long day with not a whole lot of answers. He had CT scans. He had everything, every test that they could do right away, they did, and everything turned out fine. And they said, well, everybody can have a seizure, one seizure in their life, and it can be unexplained, and you can never know why it is, and it's fine. And I was like, well, that's not good enough. That can't be my 4-year-old. Like, you can't tell me that. So they sent us home. I was scared to death for weeks to sleep. And through a series of a lot of waiting and a lot of wondering and a lot of questions, we found out that it was just something that was a benign situation. He could have it for a couple of years. They didn't know a whole lot about it, but the good thing was he didn't have to be on any kind of seizure medication. It was a lot of blessings that came from it. But I really, truly felt like coming out of that, because I started wondering, like, why in the world did this happen? I don't understand, like, why does my baby have to experience this? And I knew very much that God was just trying to remind me through my children that he is in control, because that's, as most of y'all can identify with, that's the hardest thing to relinquish control of, is your children. And when you do, God has these simple, subtle, and sometimes not so subtle ways of reminding you, no, you're not in control. They are mine. And I've got this, and all you have to do is trust me. And Brother Andy Springer was teaching a Sunday school. It was when he was doing the assembly, and I had never seen this verse before. It has since then become my life verse, but it was the first time that I probably read it before, but it really got me that day. And I started claiming Hebrews 11:6. But without faith, it is impossible to please him. For he that cometh to God must believe that he is, believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. And I started tucking him into bed every single night. And every night I would lay him down. I would pray before I walked out of his room, and I'd say, Lord, you have to watch him while I can't. And I'm coming to you right now with full faith, understanding that you are and that you can. And I'm going to go to bed tonight, and I'm going to rest my head, and I'm going to trust that while I'm sleeping, you've got him. And that was a hard thing to do. That was one of those big circumstances in my life that God says, all right, here you go. Are you going to be in control, or are you going to let me? I literally couldn't. And I really, truly feel like that he gave me that so that I could really, something 100% out of my control. Because I don't always get things really easily. Sometimes he has to slap me across the face with really big stuff. But daily, y'all can plug your circumstances into those things, your big moments in your life. But daily, it might be little. It might be catching every red light and having no control over that. And you're already late and you're like, Lord, why? Why can't I catch a break here and all that stuff? But he has a plan on that too. And if we'll just trust him that maybe he's protecting us from something else that could be a danger to us, if we trust him in that, and I think that he just constantly wants us to be in recognition of who he is and how much he loves us and how much he can truly lay everything out perfectly right before us if we'll just let him. In preparing to teach this class, I found it quite humorous today. 3 really blatantly obvious times, probably more, but blatant times, I have been presented with, okay, see, Kimberly, you're going to teach this. Do you really know that I'm in control? One of them was, today, y'all can imagine today, I was like, all right, it's crunch time. Like, we got to nail some stuff down. I got to know this. I'm presenting this to all these ladies that are coming seeking you, God. Let me show them what you want. And that's all day, my focus. Well, Jude just happened to have a dentist appointment at 3:00, right in the middle. So I was like, okay, I'm going to study all morning. I'm going to stop at 1:00. I'm going to get my shower. I'm going to get ready. I'm going to leave. I plan my whole minute by minute out for the rest of the day. And y'all, I got that car. I traveled to Ackworth. I get all the kids out. I'm walking in the car and I'm like, they go to the waiting room and I go to the front to sign them in. And she goes, oh, I'm sorry, we're going to have to reschedule your appointment. And I was like, okay. And I didn't know exactly what I was going to be coming into, but the patient in front of me walked away very irritated. And I know that I saw that young lady's face. It hurt her heart what he had said to her. And I was like, Lord, I don't want to do that to her. I can show her loving kindness and I can be a good witness for you. So let me do that. But when she told me that, I was like, okay, that'll be just fine. You just tell me when to come back. And the whole time I was thinking, Lord, I don't know why you let this happen. Like I was studying. Like, you know where I was at. Like, I was getting stuff done with you, God, But I felt like he was saying, okay, well, do you truly understand what you're about to teach? Like this was out of your control. It cost me probably an hour and a half with drive time and all of that. But it was fine. And he had those little things under control. And I don't know the purpose other than just to teach me and to show me once again, I'm in control and you are not. And that's okay. That is absolutely okay. But if you don't know that verse, that Hebrews 11:6, write that down and study that because it's a beautiful verse. And I've studied it a lot and there's a lot of truth behind it. And I've got it framed in my house, and the words he is bigger than everything else. The top part of it is one and the bottom part of it, but the middle of it is he is. And I think that that's what this class is all about. Like he is who he is, so you can trust him. We are what an ugly, diminished version of myself I become when I try to take control into my own hands. But God's hands seem so very far away sometimes. And his throne seems to sit far above where I stand. And I've heard this a lot from ladies recently. I just can't get through to him. I just don't understand. I'm seeking him. I'm trying to understand what he has for me. I'm trying to understand his control for my life, but I'm just having a hard time getting through to him. And does he really care? And can he really be trusted with my happy ending the way that I want it? Can I truly trust him? And the fact is, yes, you can. And because he leans down to dangle those cords in front of your face of your little teeny weeny controller, you can know that he cares so much about you that he takes the time to remind you in those little moments in your own personal life. He exposes my lack of control and personally invites me to trust him, and he does the same thing for y'all. Proverbs 3, 5 and 6. If y'all want to turn there and read it with me. I know that we probably all know this verse and these verses and could quote them. But I want to read it word for word out of the Bible because it just came to light to me in a new way studying for this. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths." That passage right there points me in the opposite direction of where my flesh wants to take me. Exact opposite. Rather than letting me lunge for control based on my limited perspective, God invites me to look up and to surrender and to relish. I like that word, relish, in the fact that he's in control and I am not. I think that that's beautiful, that he is in control and you are not. Do you ever get into a situation where you feel like, oh, I'm so glad I didn't have to handle that? I mean, there's some times where you don't mind stepping up and taking the lead and maybe taking something into your own hands, and even here at church or maybe at your job or in your home even. There are sometimes you don't mind that, but there are sometimes it's so nice to be like, I'm so happy that somebody else got to handle that for me and I just didn't have to do it. And that's the Lord every day, all day long. So we need to unclamp our sweaty little hands from that illusion of control that we've been gripping and lay that broken, unplugged. I'm not sure that this even works, guys. It probably doesn't. It's broken. And we need to just lay it in the hands of the one who truly is in control. I know it's a silly little thing, but it can just be a visual reminder. So I want you to ask yourself some questions. Take inventory in your mind right now. Let's take a moment. Are you living as though you're in control, or if God is? At home, you can go and reread these verses in Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. And maybe take a minute to really, at camp I heard a message on self-evaluation and examination. And, that'll do us all good if we really get along with God and really look deep into our heart about where we're at and what we're doing. But when you read those verses, list any contrast that you see between those verses in Proverbs and maybe your behavior. And then pray those verses over a situation that you're tempted to want to control, to want to take into your own hands. Because if you're tempted to control something and you read, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart and lean not unto thine own understanding," that puts things instantly into perspective. "In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths." It just recenters your mind right away and gets your heart right where you need to be. Also, in your time, you want to maybe list any of those cord dangling moments that God has used to expose your lack of control recently. And don't forget to thank God for reminding you that he is in control so that you don't have to be. That's something that we can praise him for sure. If anybody needs me to repeat those, I don't mind that. I'll give y'all a second to finish writing down. Okay, now we're going to talk about two topics that are kind of, I want y'all to understand where I'm coming from. They are anger and anxiety. I'm going to talk about these in connection to control, but I want you to know, I'm not going to say this over and over again, but anger and control, or anger and anxiety don't have to be linked to control. What I will talk about is, but if you are struggling in those areas and they are not linked to control, that as well. And those are separate issues. So just a disclaimer. So anger first. I'm going to tell you a story about a home full of little boys. Lindsay, you can relate to this. These boys had a playroom in their basement that their mom did not go to very often. The little boys complained about bees being in their basement playroom. And they'd come out and they'd say, "Mom, there's bees down there in our playroom." And she'd be like, "Oh, okay, well, just leave them alone. It's fine. You just leave it alone and it won't bother you." The boys would say, "Okay." And they'd go down and continue to play. It was easy for that mom to ignore the problem at that point, but then the boys started complaining about dead bees near the window. Mom, these bees are everywhere. They're all over the window, and this is just weird. And it's all right. Just leave them alone. I'll get them next time I go down there to clean. But the problem is she rarely went down there, and weeks went by. So one day the smallest of the boys came up to her, really got her attention. Mommy, listen to me. I am creeped out. I think I hear bees in the wall. And at that point, it got her attention. She said, what? Show me. So she runs down there, and there are hundreds of bees in the windowsill. And he was right. They are buzzing in the walls. So she calls a bee expert, gets him out to her house, and he basically tells her, you called right in the nick of time. One more minute, if they would have burrowed through your walls. And she stopped him. She said, don't tell me the rest of it. I don't need to know. But that was a problem in her home, and she was completely just pushing it under the rug. Pushing it under, not just, it's fine. I'll get it later. It's fine. It's fine. So our controlling natures are like a nest of bees burrowing right through our hearts. The trouble is we hardly ever make it down to the heart level to see that that's the problem. It's easy to ignore the warnings and pretend that those problems do not exist, but in fact they are there, and the situation is getting worse and worse and worse. And even though God might be supplying every warning sign that you need for it, you still just don't want to see it. So you have to look yourself in the eye and take a trip to your heart's basement. And if you hear buzzing, if you hear that there is a control girl lurking in your heart, stop ignoring the warnings and confront the issue. Often we think that we have a problem with anger, and we might think, or you might have the problem with anger, but the chances are it could be rooted a little deeper than that. Below the surface sin of anger, you might find that victory is not coming because you have a root sin of control. And that makes a lot of sense to me, because I've heard a lot lately about what's the issue on the top and what's at surface level is not always the root cause. I'll give you a good example about this. I shared this, I think, with a couple of you on Sunday. But the last little girl at camp, the last one to get saved, she came to me. Service was over. We had had snack time, everything. We'd gone back to our dorms, and I was on my bed doing something. I can't remember. I think packing up. Our instructions were to be getting your stuff gathered. We were leaving in the morning, and this little girl, she was probably 14, 15 years old. She came to me. She said, she just kind of looked at me, and tears were in her eyes. And I said, Haley, where were you? I couldn't find you up there at canteen. I have your money for you. And that's a whole long story. I won't explain the process of it, but I had to hold her money. So I gave her money, and she said, well, I was trying to stay away from everybody up there. And her just increasing tears, and I was like, well, Haley, what's the matter? What happened? And she said, she started going into this whole thing of, well, this girl said this, and I like this boy, but she doesn't want, and just all this stuff. And I thought, oh my goodness, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, this is just crazy and just silly and all this stuff. But I was trying to listen to her and trying to, validate her feelings a little bit and trying to understand where she was coming from. And she was right in the middle of, blah, 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 I don't know why, blah, blah, blah. And she went, and I don't know if I'm saved. And I was like, oh, okay, we can talk about that. And, so I say all that to say that she came to me with one problem. She thought she was upset about all this other stuff, but what was underneath was that she was concerned about her salvation. And that was what was the real issue under everything. And that's probably what was affecting her, and, why she was a little tearful and why she was a little bit sensitive and all that stuff. So she had a root problem. And oftentimes we do too in our life. We think we've got something going on, and it really is much deeper than that. So when you link anger and control together, you might find that you can get more traction on handling that anger when you feel that anger rising. If you ask yourself, all right, wait just a minute, what am I trying to control? And what is this making me angry that I feel like I'm losing everything? Like I just can't grasp it quick enough, and it's just fleeting from my hands. To help understand yourself better, you can maybe keep a journal. Some of us that are in RU are encouraged to do that anyway, but if you're not, you can keep a journal of any kind of angry outburst. And that's not always fun to write down about yourself. Not always fun to see on paper. It's like keeping a diet journal. That's the worst. Like, oh no, I ate a whole bag of M&Ms. But keeping those are handy, and they are useful to kind of help yourself see some reoccurring patterns in your life that might come up. And when you do that, you might see some outbursts and consider whether those indicate a deeper struggle with control. And maybe they do, maybe they don't, but it'll help you see the connection. Next is anxiety. Oh my goodness. It's like 5 minutes left. Woo! Y'all, I gotta hurry. Okay. We might not get to Eve. But with anxiety, it's important to understand why this is an issue. So this is why I wanted to spend so much time on this tonight. But if anger is not your problem, maybe you've never pitched a fit in your life. If that's the case, I want you to come see me after class and tell me how to do that, because I can pitch a fit with the best of them, especially in my own home. I try not to do it anywhere else but there. But but if you never raise your voice or anything like that, instead, behind closed doors, you are pacing and fretting and obsessing over every unpredictable situation in life. I'm blessed enough that I have both of these problems, anger and anxiety. Studying this, I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, like I can pitch a fit and I can worry. So I don't know where I fall in these. Maybe I need to keep an extra thick journal. But but the root sin, just like anger, just like with anger, with anxiety, you can have that root problem of control. I've got all sorts of stories to share with y'all here written in my notes, but I know that I don't have time to do that. I'm just going to share one story just to show you an example of what this anxiety did to me one time in my life, a pretty serious time. It was here at this church. Jill was an infant. Lindsay, you might remember this. Jill was an itty bitty baby, and she was born in November, like right in the peak of sick season. And I'm getting better with my germaphobe ways, but when my babies were little, it was bad. And there was a girl that we went to church with that I don't know for sure that she had it, but she said that she had mono. And here I have this infant, and I'm like, okay, Lord, like protect my baby. So do you remember? And y'all, this girl, we would have fellowship dinners, and I'd watch her. She'd come down and she'd fix her plate, and she'd go, fix her plate. Fix her plate. And I was like I'm about to die. I walked around this church for months trying to hide it from everybody, but I would go to the bathroom, I'd wash my hands, and I'd get paper towels. And I would walk through every door in this church, opening doors with paper towels so that I would not get her germs on me and then spread them to my baby. I mean, I got bad about it. I was like, okay, thinking logically, I'm not sure that this was logical, but in my mind, like I was going to pick up her mono germs, give it to Jill. Jill was going to get stressed or cry or something because she was hungry. Her spleen was going to rupture because that was going to be what was affected from the mono that she had contracted. And I mean, it was just bad. At that time, like I could not go to a restaurant and get ketchup without using a napkin to hold it. I work hard at this now. If y'all go out to eat with me, don't judge or examine me too closely, because I may or may not do it. But I like to sanitize my hands after I've touched that, but it got bad. And my husband was like, Kimberly, you got to get a handle on this. Like, God is in control of our children. He has them, like, they are his, not yours, not mine. They are his. And God, like, you have to be smart with what you do with your children and all that kind of stuff with anything. But on the other hand, you can get a little bit crazy about it, like I did. And I learned a lot about that. And eventually he was like, you might have to get some therapy for this, girl. Like, you are getting insane. And I was like, I know. It's like, it's bad. I don't know what to do. Like, it was really bad. But I prayed about it, and the Lord has helped it get better. It really has. But those are some of the anxiety kind of moments. Just an example from my own life, like I said. Pastor used to travel for convention once a year. And y'all, I literally would have his funeral planned in my head. I mean, honest to goodness, I would cry like a baby when he left, because I'm like, well, you're good as dead. You are good as dead. I'm like, 3 days from now, I'm going to be walking the aisle in my black dress as a widow. Like, I'm telling you what, I got bad about it. And he would always tell me, like, Kimberly, if I'm going to die, I can die in an airplane just as easy as I can die right here in this house. Stop it. Because he is very good at just giving the Lord all sorts of control. And I'm not so good about it. So I want to talk about 2 responses. What, are you laughing at me? Oh,
Jason, he just gives it away. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Gives
like,
what
I
away?
see all kinds of things going wrong. Jason just gives all control to God.
Yeah.
Like,
I know.
all of it.
I know.
And I'm like, it's like all of it.
All of it. I know. You're like, don't you just want to hold like a little piece?
Yes.
Just a little.
I'm staring at it, I'm like, this is going to be so bad. This is going to be never that.
I'm telling you what, because that's a good example and a good testimony to the Lord. Because when you do give it all to Him, He actually can control it.
I know, like, me and Mom, she's not here today, but I'm sure she'd be saying the same thing. Like, we're just sitting back like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like, oh my
It's warm in here. Are y'all hot?
hot.
Okay. Well, I want to tell you about what's called a hold and fold method. So the first one is, everybody cup your hands. Imagine in your life, these are the things that you can hold. Responsibility for yourself. That's pretty much it.
Oh, wow.
Self-control is a fruit of the Spirit. And when we are in control of ourselves, like today, when I was able to let the Lord just control me and not be like, what do you mean? Don't you know I've been studying? I've got a class to teach and you're going to cancel my appointment. I didn't do that. I held it. Thanks to the Lord, I was able to control my spirit at that moment. And we are being godly when we can do those, and y'all have those opportunities too. What we are not holding, you fold in prayer. And give God the control of those things that you can't. So either hold it or fold it. One of the 2 categories.
Let me write this
I love this girl.
As we try to control things that we can't, we tend to lose control of the one thing we can, and that's ourselves. Let's say that again. As we try to control the things that we can't control, we tend to lose control of the one thing that we can, and that's us. In order to reverse our natural bent, we have to cultivate a new demeanor towards God, and that comes through surrender. I don't want to talk about all this negative stuff and not tell you a way to remedy it, and it's through surrender. Now, I'm going to tell you something right now. Surrender sounds very good in theory. It's something that I try to daily tell the Lord, God, I surrender my day to you. Please take it and do what you will with me. I'm sure y'all have similar prayers every day. You've been in services just like me where you get convicted about, I know that the Lord wants every bit, like Jess was talking about, all of us, not just a little bit reserved, but most of us. He wants all of us. We sing with our hands raised, I surrender all. And maybe we go to the altar. Maybe we lay it down in front of Him and passively tell the Lord, whatever you want of me, Lord, it's yours. And maybe that's true. It is a true feeling. You're there in your heart. You're like, God, take me, use me. And for days, that's where you live. And then something happens where you just want to snatch all of it back. But surrender is an active responsibility. It begins with that quiet promise to the Lord, but it is put into action in the uphill challenge of relinquishing control. Only a few steps into our journey of surrender. Our burning lungs, pounding hearts, we scream like, no, I want to turn back. I want to control it. We want to cave in with our weak-hearted control girl ways. But a new mindset will keep our feet to the path and will fuel our uphill challenge. Romans 12:2, y'all know it, but it says, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is good and acceptable and perfect will of God. I don't know if this will resonate with y'all, but it did with me. You might say, I don't understand. I have faith in God. I do believe He's in control. I know I can trust Him. But then I try to control everything. And why is that? It doesn't make sense to me. We have to know how to bridge that gap between what we say about God and how we live about God, as if we're in control and we trust ourselves. So we build that bridge thought by thought. It's simple. This is no like crazy new doctrine or anything like that. It's just thought by thought in our minds. The Bible calls it meditation. One of my very favorite verses in the whole Bible is Psalm 19:14. Let me find it. Let the words of my mouth, and the words of my mouth are often easy for me. Not always, but often. And the Lord's done a lot over the years with the words of my mouth. But the part that gets me every time is in the meditation of my heart. What I think about, what I let myself dwell on. It goes on to say, let it be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer. We fill our minds with truth. That's how we overcome this battle. If you're not sure on what it is, meditation is just pondering deeply and looking with fresh eyes at what we believe is truth. Fresh eyes. We act the way we act because we think the way we think. We take control because we think we have to. Or maybe you think nobody else could do it the way I could. But that goes to show you that we can all get in the wrong pattern of thinking sometimes. God is already in control. That's the truth. And if our behavior is ever going to reflect that truth, we've got to change our thinking. Meditation on truth about God helps cultivate that new mindset of surrender. So you read his word slowly, you think carefully about what they mean and what that looks like in your own life, and then look for opportunities to apply that in your daily life. And I guarantee you God will give you opportunities for it. If you want to grow and be better for him in a certain area of your life, and you ask him to give you opportunities, don't get mad when he does, because he's going to answer that prayer. He's going to give you those new things and those new chances. And the wonderful blessing is when we notice that, and then when we do have those areas of growth and we can become more like him. And if we start now and don't give up, we cultivate that mindset of surrender and make a habit of saying, not my will, but yours be done. And transformation is possible. It's almost 10 after 8. I have stuff about Eve, and I really badly wish that I could get into it. I guess we'll move her to next week and probably talk about several of these young ladies in our study. But I really appreciate y'all.